So a really interesting topic is single overhead cam versus dual overhead cam and pushrod or overhead valve engines. Now, why did World War I and World War II planes use a lot of single overhead cam? And there's a lot of interesting reasons. So when you look at this topic for, like, let's say a car debate, there's a lot of back and forth. And the most common responses you'll hear that dual overhead cam revs higher or it breathes better. That's a term I'm hearing a lot, breathes better. Well, if you use a forked rocker arm, you can get the same amount of valves in a single overhead cam versus a dual overhead cam. So the reason it's used in airplanes, so a lot of the planes built in France during World War I and World War II were using what's called the Hispano-Suiza engine, which is Spanish and Swiss, and the engine was actually manufactured in France. The reason it was manufactured as a single overhead cam is because it was actually much lighter, and maintenance and reliability when you're talking about aircrafts is even more important, even than with all the regulations with car manufacturers. The airplane regulations are, believe it or not, even stricter than car regulations. So I think that tells you sort of the answer is cars are trying to achieve these fuel economy standards, which require the dual overhead cam because you can have the variable valve timing, variable valve lift, everything that adjusts sort of the valve operation, which is much harder to do when you're using a single overhead cam technology. So single overhead cam in cars has mostly been phased out in favor of these fuel-saving technologies. But when performance, reliability, and the weight is most important, there are many planes that, believe it or not, still today are using single overhead cam. There's this company called Aero Momentum. If you want to build a kit plane, it's still considered the most reliable, cost-effective way to start building airplanes. Now, back during World War I, there was competition from basically all these different countries had like prototypes. So they had to pass these crazy parameters. So they were going to build the first SPOD planes in World War I using an airplane engine that was from France. But the Hispano-Suiza, because it was from Barcelona, Spain, had to pass a more ridiculous level of 50 hours at full throttle. Basically, almost impossible, and it passed it easily. So that is why a lot of classic airplanes from World War I and World War II had single overhead cam engines. Now, if you go to the other side, who they were fighting against, they were using single overhead cam, but inline engines. So BMW's cut their teeth by building airplane engines, but they were using inline six engines. Now, some of these engines were very large. 36 liters was what the Hispano-Suiza was using during